Welcome, everybody, to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. My name, of course, is Dean Jones. As you probably already know, I'm the Well-Seasoned Librarian, and I want to thank you for being here again today. I have a wonderful guest. I was really excited to get a chance to talk to. If you've been to the Nom Nom Paleo website or read the wonderful Nom Nom Paleo cookbooks, the newest one of which is coming out next week, or actually this week, because this is going to be here on Monday, so it'll be actually today that it's coming out. Michelle Tam of Nom Nom Paleo and her husband have put out some great, wonderful cookbooks and a really great website as well. Great recipe index, really great visuals, just all around 100% gold star production on that one. And I really had a great time talking to Michelle. She's very informative and very genial and just an all-around great guest. So without further ado, I'm going to take you to the episode conversation that I had with Michelle Tam talking about her newest Nom Nom Paleo book. And on we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I want to thank you for listening today. I have a very special guest on today I'm very excited about, and I have so many questions. I'm very excited about having my guest here today. I'm talking to Michelle Tam of the Nom Nom Paleo website. If you've not seen it, you need to go look at it. We have links in the bio, and it's a real treat. It's a really beautiful, very fun, energetic website. It's very high energy. I think you're going to really like. In addition to the Nom Nom Paleo website, Michelle has a series of 2 books out already and 1 book coming out next week. We have the Nom Nom Paleo books, which is Nom Nom Paleo Ready or Not. Wait, sorry, I'm getting that out of order. Nom Nom Paleo Food for Humans, Nom Nom Paleo Ready or Not, and next week we're going to have Nom Nom Paleo Let's Go. So I'm going to introduce Michelle Tam to the podcast. Michelle, thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Now, for our listeners who are not familiar with your work, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I am Michelle Tam, and I am a native of the San Francisco Bay Area. I like to call myself a zombie pharmacist. So I was a night shift hospital pharmacist for many years. And then while I was a night shift pharmacist, I kind of discovered the paleo diet. And then I started a blog about it, and I never thought anyone was going to read it. It literally was a Tumblr blog where I just wrote about what I ate, and I swore all the time. And I thought the only person reading it was maybe my husband, but even that was iffy. And then one thing kind of led to another. And as I started posting on my blog, I was like, oh, I have to start cooking for myself. I can't just go out and eat paleo. And that's when I started developing recipes. And one thing led to another, and here I am now.
Now, you described yourself as a zombie pharmacist, but before you studied pharmacy, you studied nutrition and food science at UC Berkeley. So what was the impetus that got you studying nutrition and food science and working with, I think in your bio, it mentioned that you wanted to work with flavor science. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I went into college, as kind of like a science. I knew I wanted to do something in science, and I thought I was going to do something like I was going to do one of the professional schools, except I didn't want to touch naked people, stick my hands in anyone's mouths, or stick my hands in anyone's eyes. And so I was like, oh, pharmacy school is a good one. But before that, I actually thought I wanted to get a PhD in nutrition and food science because I love food, and that's something that I'm obsessed with, that I've been obsessed with. But then I actually did a senior honors thesis in the lab, and I was like, oh, I can't do this. The lab work was just too repetitive, and I just couldn't do it. But I did love, learning about food, and so that's an obsession that's continued.
Now, you later got a doctorate in clinical pharmacology at UCSF. Can you tell us about why you ended up choosing pharmacology?
So I do have a pharmacy doctorate. And as I said before, it was kind of, I think I just liked science, and I liked, being able to help people, but I also I liked it. I wanted it to be in kind of like a clean and controlled environment. And I knew pharmacy was that. And I also knew that it was a career where there were lots of different options.
Yeah.
You could work in all sorts of different environments, and there was always going to be a need for it. And I think as a child of immigrants, you're always kind of told to find um, a safe career path. And so that to me was kind of a safe career path. And I worked as a pharmacist for a long time. I think I worked for 14 years, but the whole time I feel like I was working just so I could, like, all I did was I would work, and then for my off days, I would just plan where we would go out to eat or where we could travel so I could eat something delicious.
We've had some food scientists on the show, and many of them, I think there's always this shared bond between a lot of people and food scientists that if you like food, normally you're that kid that wonders about things and where they come from, how they're made. Were you that kid? Were you kind of a food nerd, kind of wondering about things like, where does this raspberry flavor come from? Like, what makes this or acidic acid, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think all of that stuff was really fascinating to me. And I think when I was taking my nutrition and food science classes in college, like we had this, um, it was called, like, I think it was called kitchen chemistry, but it was like a quote unquote lab class, but it was a cooking class. And we would kind of learn about, what is actually happening when you're like baking bread, like all the different chemical reactions, and what actually causes lactose free milk to be lactose free, like, and it was just kind of the science behind it that I found really fascinating. um, but it is kind of interesting that I ended up, you know, I ended up now in a place where I kind of promote eating real food as opposed to Frankenfoods and things
Yeah.
that are lab created. Because at first I did think, you could have better living through chemistry, but I think I've kind of realized there's only, you can't really mess with Mother Nature. There's been stuff that has been evolved over, you know, thousands of years, and people have eaten a certain way for thousands of years, and only recently have we kind of done all this kind of like lab concocted food that may not be so good for us.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I've kind of done a 180, as a lot of my friends have said.
I grew up in the 70s where I think 90%, maybe 95% of what we ate was Frankenfood. And now
Hmm.
I think people imagine we're in a better space. But I think when you look at a lot of recipes, or not recipes, when you look at the ingredients list and a lot of things, just chocolate chip cookies in a box off the shelf, there's a lot of stuff in there. You're like, what the hell is this? I mean, do you have
Yeah,
that experience when you look at stuff too sometimes?
totally. I mean, I think one of the kind of eye-opening things when I kind of went paleo is I just never questioned anything. Like if someone told me something was healthy, I was like, okay, and I ate that healthy thing, and I never thought about how that food actually made me feel. Like, remember there were so many cookies in the 90s that were like no fat, but then
Yeah,
there was all this
Snackwells.
sugar in it. Yeah, Snackwells, right? And then
Yeah,
all the Olean like stuff that, or the Olestra stuff,
yeah.
like that was that fat substitute that apparently caused people to have, terrible GI symptoms. But it seemed miraculous. You're like, oh, you can't absorb this fat, but then it just goes right through you. But all of those things, like I ate a lot of those things, and anything that I would learn that was supposed to be healthy, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go like super whole grain, super low fat, and I'm gonna cut out this. And but I felt terrible. Like I just felt terrible, but I didn't realize I felt terrible. I just thought that's how I always felt. And then when I ate, paleo, and I was like eating like, lots of fruits and vegetables and healthy proteins, and I was like, oh, all of a sudden, all these things that I thought everybody felt and it was a normal for me, like they kind of went away. And so that's kind of how I came to where I am now.
Yeah, I invite anybody who wants to study this topic to look up a YouTube video on how you make margarine or how you make corn syrup. You'll be quite surprised and probably never eat those products ever again.
Yeah.
While you were in school, you met your husband, who I think he's a collaborator on a lot of your works, if not all of them. Is that
Yes.
correct? Yeah.
He does all the stuff people like
Yeah.
all the photos, all the cartoons, all the fun design. That's all Henry.
Yeah, I love his cartoons. I'm a big fan of his stuff. They're really, really cool. And they really kind of pop out in the books and on the website. Um, Now you both became kind of foodies in the food scene here in the Bay Area. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we met at UC Berkeley. And so all we would do is we would just kind of eat our way around the Bay Area as college students. I mean, as I guess poor college students. Or we would just use our loan money and
Yeah,
just eat our way
been
through the
there.
Bay Area. And there's just so much here. Like there's like a melting pot of all these immigrant cultures. It
Yeah.
was the first time I'd ever had Ethiopian food, and I thought it was just amazing. And then you're just, over the bridge, you can just go to San Francisco, and there's just so much great food.
Yeah.
And I think Henry likes food, but he's really great in that he just kind of lets me drag him wherever. Like we have this thing where he likes, and there's certain things he really cares about, and I just don't care about that much. And I let him kind of, you know, drive on whatever that is. And then other things that I really care about, like food, he just lets me kind of take us wherever. So that's the thing. Like I've always loved eating, and I live for eating. But I realized that I didn't feel great eating a lot of the foods I was eating, and so that's why I, created my cookbooks.
Now, I think I'm like a lot of people who gets confused when I hear terms like paleo and keto, and
Mhm.
there's all these different terms now. So can you tell us, for those of us who are confused or not clear on the term, what does paleo mean and what is a paleo diet?
So paleo is something that's been around for a while, and I am not a strict adherent to what exactly is paleo. Like I
Right.
think it's ridiculous to say this is it, you have to eat like how the cavemen ate, because that's
Yeah.
ridiculous and no
Yeah.
one wants to live like that. For me, it really is just eating real food, just like fruits, vegetables, healthy proteins, seeds, nuts, whatever, and seeing how that makes you feel. And then you can totally incorporate other things back into your diet, but just being mindful of how they make you feel. So I really don't care how anybody eats. I just want people to cook their own meals and to pay attention to how food makes them feel and to make smart choices.
Now, how did you and your husband discover the paleo diet? Like, how did it come up for both of you?
Oh, so Henry, well, I think we had two young kids and we had stopped going to the gym. So we decided to start doing home videos. And he found P90X, which I'm like, I think anybody back in the like 10, 15 years ago, it was something that was on infomercials all the time. And it was like this 90-day workout plan. And so he started blogging about it as a way to kind of keep accountable. And he would write about the different people in these videos. And one of them was Mark Sisson. And Mark Sisson is someone that kind of is one of the early founders of the paleo movement. And so when he looked him up online, he was like, oh, this guy has this way of eating, like this primal way of eating. And it just kind of interested him because it included a lot of the stuff that we had cut out of our diets, like, red meat and it to him, he's like, oh, I'm going to try this out and see how it makes me feel. Like it is just eating real food. And he tried it and he immediately like got a six pack and had all this energy and was doing like, he was like exercise wise, he was doing all this stuff. And here I was like counting all my calories, doing crazy, crazy cardio, thinking I was eating healthy, but I still had like my muffin top and I was hungry all the time and I had achy joints. And so I was like, maybe I'll just try what you're doing. And I did, and I felt so much better.
Now, how did you guys get to the point where you created your Nom Nom Paleo Food for Humans cookbook, which was your first cookbook? How did that come about?
So we had done an iOS app first.
Oh, yes,
And
that's
at
right. Yeah.
first, I think there was a New York Times article about how cooking apps were going to be the cookbooks of the future, because I think
Mhm.
this was right when the iPad came out. And it seemed like it would be an amazing vehicle for this, except nobody wants to pay for apps. And
Yeah.
everybody's iPad gets stolen by their children.
Yeah.
And app development is super expensive. So we did make an app, and we liked it a lot. But then we realized, like with technology, like anytime Apple does an update, it can break your app. And we're like, oh, we
Yeah.
want something more permanent. And I love cookbooks and I have a huge cookbook collection. And so we started working on our own cookbook kind of secretly. We're like, oh, we've kind of done this kind of self-publishing thing ourselves. And we had friends who had self-published. And so, and Henry's very particular about making sure, like, creatively things are his way. And so we started working on non-paleo food for humans. Um, and then we were approached by our publisher, Andrews McMeel, and they're like, "Hey, you want to do a cookbook with us?" And we're like, "Not really. We have this plan to do it ourselves." But luckily, they convinced us that it would probably be smarter to get, like, to work with a big publisher. So that's how we kind of did it. But they've been a wonderful place to work with. They totally let us do whatever we want. I mean, within reason. And they kind of edit us, which we do need. But it's been great. Like, Andrews McMeel does all of these children's books and graphic novels. And so our book is kind of a cookbook with all of those elements. And we secretly design it for kids. Even though, I mean, obviously adults use it, but we secretly try to make it really kid friendly so that, kids will be interested in cooking and interested in where their food comes from, and maybe point to a recipe and say, "Hey, mom or dad, let's cook this together." And we've actually gotten a lot of feedback that it's been successful. So that makes us really happy.
The art production on your cookbooks is really beautiful. Were you worried when you went with a big publisher that they would come in and kind of be heavy-handed with it? Was there some concern about that in the beginning?
I mean, obviously the reason why we wanted to self-publish is we were worried about that.
Yeah.
But I think when we made our deal with Andrews McMeel, it was very clear that we wanted things done our way. And if they didn't want to, it was fine. We literally already had a contract with a self-publisher that we were about to sign. And so we had nothing to lose. And luckily they are like, "Nope, we will try this out." And I think at the time, like, our first cookbook came out right when I think the publishing industry was kind of going through all this upheaval. And they were like, "No, we're willing to kind of look outside the box and see if this works." And they totally took a bet on us, which we appreciate. And I think that for all of us, we're very happy with how it turned out.
Now, this led up to your second book, which is Nom Nom Paleo, Ready or Not. What was different about this one, and what did you guys take for a different approach on this one?
So for our second one, this one, we totally, it wasn't one that we had kind of started on our own and was finishing up with Andrews McMeel. This one we kind of, we were trying to figure it out with Andrews McMeel. And how it was different is we totally wanted it to be extra comic book in that every single step had a picture. Whereas in our first book, we did have step-by-step pictures, but not as much as we wanted. Like, we literally wanted it to be like those old DK books where it was like every step had a picture. And then we were like, "Oh, let's make the format a little different and have it be arranged by your state of readiness. Like, if you're kind of ready, you're totally ready, or you're not ready at all." So that's how we did the second book. And I think with the third book, we kind of, and every book is kind of like, we've built on feedback we've gotten from the previous book. And so for this new book, we kind of took the best of both of those cookbooks, and listened to everybody's feedback, and then made sure that the content for this current book, Let's Go, is like, this is me really leaning into comfort food from my childhood, like growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area, having, living in a Cantonese family, but also growing up around all of this amazing food in the Bay Area. And we created most of it during the pandemic. And so for me, this is what gave me comfort. I know a lot of people were like, "Oh, sourdough and all this other stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, that's great." But for me, like, Cantonese egg tarts, if I
Which
can
I
make
was
a
happy
paleo
to see
version.
included, by the way. That was like, I saw that just like the hour before we started talking, and I was like, whoa.
That took a
I'm
lot
down
of
for
work.
that.
That took a lot of work for me to do, but I think quarantine really really made me work on my paleo baking. Because before I wouldn't do too many desserts in any of my books, just because desserts are really hard to do. Like to make them
Yeah.
paleo and grain-free and gluten-free and refined sugar-free, and it still tastes delicious. But I think being trapped and not being able to see friends and family or go out to eat, it's like, okay, I guess I have to figure this out.
Well, one thing, and I'm not trying to say this just give you, a lot of praise, but like I feel like when I looked at paleo cookbooks 10 years ago, I was kind of turned off because a lot of them were they very much seemed to be made by people who didn't know anything about cooking or didn't really like food. So it was like meat, more meat, and a lot of coconut oil. And I was just kind of
Yes.
like, I don't know, this seems
I
weird to
remember
me.
those days.
Yeah. And so now I look at the stuff you produce and like, I don't really feel like I'd be missing out by eating from your recipes because everything seems to be here. All the things I like are here. And like you mentioned, the egg tarts, I'm like, if there's egg tarts, I'm going here. Like this is great because like I don't feel like I'm lacking. There's no sense of lacking. So I know that that was probably in your mind when you created this. What or just when you've been cooking for yourself, if this is the way you're doing, I think like you said, you'd probably want to say, well, I still want to have these things I like. So what were some of the things that you were kind of like, how do I incorporate these? And then like what was some of the trials you had? Because I know that as somebody who's tried some of these recipes and stuff like that, I feel like there's a learning curve. And some people sometimes you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and try again. So what was it like for you to do this?
Oh, there's lots. I mean, there's definitely certain recipes that are easier for me to do. Like I think a lot of the savory recipes, I can normally kind of get them pretty quickly, but definitely the baking ones take me a lot of time. Like I have a paleo sandwich bread in this latest book that took a lot of trial and error. And then I recruited my friend and recipe tester, who is also a master baker, like a regular baker, not a paleo baker.
Yeah.
And so she helped me with it. And then she has a weekly meeting with like a baking maven of hers. And so we all work together on this recipe, which I'm actually very happy with. But I think that though any of the dessert recipes I think took me the longest. And I think the paleo pot stickers took me a long time to kind of nail the wrapper. Because the filling is easy. And I have like wonton meatballs and like there's lots of ways to just the filling is the easy part. It's the wrapper that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But I think we nailed that one.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger, where you'll find over 30,000 mouth-watering choices that excite your inner foodie. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices, plus extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week. You can also save up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with fuel points. More savings and more inspiring flavors make shopping Kroger worth it every time. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Where did your background in food science come in on this? Because I know that since the paleo movement has taken off, we've seen a lot of things in the grocery store we didn't see before. Like obviously we're
Mm-hmm.
seeing different types of almond flour and different types like cassia flour, things like that. But I'm seeing like Arabic gum mastic coming into like Safeway now, which you would never have seen before. So where did some of this science come in for you?
So I think I'm always kind of thinking of the science, like I like because cooking is a science, and
Yeah.
like my major, like even though it was nutrition food science, it was more of like a chemistry major, and so there's definitely I do use a lot of that, and I'm very precise about all my measurements. And like when I'm recipe developing, I have a Google Doc open,
Yeah.
and I have my scale out, and so I always try to make it so that I can replicate it, the right way. But definitely, I think since I started like 10, 11 years ago, there's so much available now, and so many things are readily available. Like, and I think because a lot of people are gluten free, there's a lot of stuff, and they're not necessarily paleo, but there's a lot of stuff that is that you can buy online or at your regular grocery store.
Now I want to ask this question out of curiosity. Sticking to a paleo diet and living within a paleo diet, what is your kryptonite as far as falling off of that? Do you ever have anything where you're like, you got to have it sometimes, like pizza or something like that?
You know, I don't actually believe in like totally. I think if you can eat it and you can tolerate it and it doesn't wreck you and it gives you joy, I think it's fine to eat it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think you should ever think like, oh no, I've suddenly eaten some, indulgent lunch and that means I can never eat healthy again.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that I think, but that's how some people feel, right?
right.
So for me, I think that you just kind of I think of kind of paleo as like a roadmap, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
you make detours, but then you can kind of get back on it. But I don't think anybody should strictly adhere to anything just because they feel like they have to. Like, I think you should do something because it makes you feel good and it makes you feel better and you enjoy it. But I like for me, I have to eat gluten free because I think after I went paleo, I discovered that I'm probably celiac. And so I don't eat gluten, but it's not because it's just gluten. It's because it makes me feel terrible. And that's
Yeah,
what
right.
made me feel terrible my whole life. And I
Oh my
didn't
God.
realize it.
Yikes.
Um, and so I don't know. I don't think you should deprive yourself, but you should recognize which foods make you feel better and which ones don't, and
Yeah.
be like be an adult about it. Like,
Well, yeah, it's funny because you could go most of your life being slightly allergic to something and not knowing. I had a friend, she
Mhm.
discovered she couldn't eat from the nightshade family after
Yeah.
like maybe 40 years or more of eating nightshades almost
Yep.
daily. And she said she cut the nightshades out, which is potatoes, tomatoes, etc.,
Mhm.
peppers, which would kill me. But she cut all those out and she's like, I'm happy as a clam now. No
Yeah.
issues, no joint pain. And
Yep.
I'm like, it's fascinating how we live our whole lives maybe and not know we're allergic to something. It's
Right.
crazy.
And I think that's the thing. It's like this is your normal, and you think everybody else feels this way too, or experiences like whatever, like this kind of low grade bad stuff, but you're like, whatever, this is just my normal. And so I think when you actually cut certain things out, I mean, that's how I kind of feel with like the paleo diet. Like the paleo diet, if you were to be like too super strict about it, is you cut out like certain things, you just eat like vegetables, fruits, and healthy proteins and nuts and seeds and healthy oils or whatever. But you can add things in and then see how they affect you, right? Because then your baseline is kind of like this healthy baseline, and then you can kind of see, because you can probably tolerate a lot more than you think you can, and you don't have to be that restrictive. I mean, for me, one of the things that I discovered that I can't eat very often and makes me very, very sad is I can't eat rice, because it actually makes my blood sugar go up really high and it
Yikes.
stays elevated. And I never realized it. I just thought, I was like, oh, I'm so sleepy when I eat a bowl of pho. But I was like, I don't know why. Maybe it's just lunch. But then when I actually tested my blood sugar, I was like, oh my gosh, my blood sugar is like 200, and it's been like that for several hours when it should have come down. So I was like, I'm gonna have to watch it.
Yeah, I think all of us should probably go back to our doctors and say, hey, maybe we should explore this a little bit and see
Mhm.
what we can do to like improve our health. Now, you're a parent and you have kids, and I have kids too. And I know that oftentimes through the week, I have go-to meals I know they'll eat and not give me a lot of grief about. And
Mhm.
do you have any like paleo go-to meals for your family that you make often, just as an easy meal?
Yeah, I make stir fries all the time. And then people are like, oh, is it a specific stir fry? I'm like, no, it's whatever is in my fridge. It is my clean the fridge out garbage stir fry, because it's whatever would end up in the garbage is going to end up in my skillet. But I have like certain flavor boosters, like my all-purpose stir fry sauce. I have a jar of that already made in my fridge all the time. I have the seasoning powder called umami stir fry powder. There's a recipe in our cookbook, and we actually are just selling it now, but that's all I use. And it's got like salt, shiitake, mushroom powder, green onions, garlic, ginger, white pepper, and some onions. And these are the things my mom normally puts in a stir fry, but this way I can sprinkle it on without actually chopping anything up. So those are like a stir fry, or I like roast Like I roast chicken all the time, or I throw stuff in the air fryer. I mean, I have a recipe in Let's Go, which I call 2-ingredient chicken, because it literally is chicken and one of my seasoning blends. But those are, and then I micro steam vegetables all the time. That's kind of my new thing, because I got these new bowls that like microwave like amazingly, right? Like I think normally people don't use your microwave because it like, it dries things out, or, whatever. But these bowls are amazing. And I can throw vegetables in there, and in like 2 minutes, they are perfect.
Ooh, that sounds nice.
Yeah.
I'm interested in that. Now, I saw on your website you're selling spice blends now, and I was really
Mhm.
excited about that. Can you talk to us about your spice blends?
Oh yeah, that kind of just happened. Like we've had like one of our recipes, magic mushroom powder, which is in the first book and has been on our blog and app. Like when we used to do a lot of stuff with Whole Foods, they're like, hey, have you ever thought of making this into a product? And we're like, no, because that was just never something we wanted to do. But they're like, no, maybe we can turn this into an actual product people can buy, because it would make it so convenient. And so then for many years, we like Whole Foods made this, and we had like a licensing agreement with them. And then I think like 2 years ago, before pandemic, Whole Foods is like, this is so people love this so much, let's come up with different blends. And at the time I was already starting on our new cookbook, and I was like, oh, I have these other blends that I'm working on. And so we were gonna come out with some with Whole Foods, and then I think just a few months ago they're like, nope, it's not gonna work out, we've decided to kind of restructure things. And we're like, I don't like that.
Lame
And then
Whole
it
Foods,
turns,
lame.
yeah. And so then my sister, who actually is a chef, like she's worked in restaurants, and she is like the spice blender at a spice company
Ooh,
in Florida. I was like, why don't we bring this to the company Fiona works at, and let's see what happens. And I chatted with them, and they were like, no, let's make this happen. And literally in just a few months, these spice blends are now a reality, which makes me really happy, because I can just use them and not make them myself, even though like 3 out of the 4 recipes are in our new cookbook. So people in Canada who actually can't get shipped the spice blends, or people, who don't want to buy spice blends, like the recipes are in our cookbook, but if you don't want to make them yourself, you can buy them. And that to me, like as someone who is like a lazy home cook, who wants something really delicious, I like that they're available.
I also, as I mentioned before, I do a lot of cooking for my family, like everybody who has kids. I have to do a lot of meal plans every week. I'm kind of the one in charge of that. And I saw that you guys do meal plans on your website. Can you tell me about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, we have meal plans. I actually am not a great meal planner, but I know that there are some people who really depend on it, or really like doing it. And so what I do like I have an email newsletter, and every Saturday I send people 5 things that they can cook for the week, just so it kind of gets their thinking caps kind of going, so they can be like, oh, what are some things that I'm going to make this week, just so they can start planning ahead. But if you actually want like really detailed and interactive meal plans, Real Plans is a company that does it, and they incorporated, some of our recipes into their system. But it's like a super smart way of doing it, and if that's something you're into, you should subscribe to that. But for me, I'm the type of person that's like total fly by your seat of your pants kind of cook. If I
Mhm.
don't have a bunch of recipes that I've tested for the week that we're already eating. So for me, I just like to have like a reminder to like kind of plan stuff, but I don't detail, like I'm not someone that has like the whole week's shopping list ready. And I mean, I wish I was. Like my kids would be eating a lot earlier than they normally do.
Yeah, we've all been there. So, what's your personal paleo meal favorite? The one thing you would, outside of your family, one thing you'd like to eat every day, you kind of like to eat often.
Hmm. I always joke that my favorite meal is one that someone else makes for me.
I like that.
Because I mean, whenever I hear people are like, I love to cook and I love to cook for my family, I'm like, well, that's great. Like, but I actually love it when someone cooks for me. And I just feel like just yesterday I went to go visit my parents and I was busy because I was doing all this kind of stuff for the book launch. And my mom made me this really amazing salad. And she knows that I'm paleo. And she and my dad have started eating paleo, even though I've been doing this
Nice.
for 12 years. And it's really cute. But it was like, it had like roast beef and these beautiful hard-boiled eggs and
Mm,
greens and a perfect avocado and this really
nice.
amazing dressing. And I was like, this is the perfect meal. Thank you. This, you know, I had a really good meal yesterday.
That sounds wonderful. Now, you said you have a lot of cookbooks. Who are some of your favorite food writers that you like to follow, paleo or
Oh,
not?
I am a big fan of Andrea Nguyen. I think her books, I love her Vietnamese cookbooks, and she's such a funny, no nonsense person. Like I just love her. So I love her cookbooks. Trying to think what other, I mean, obviously I love Samin's, Samin Nosrat's book. It's amazing. I like Kenji's books. Um, I collect, oh, and then my friend Gregory Gourdet, I love his book, Everyone's Table, because it is kind of a chef's take on kind of paleo, but he doesn't call it paleo. Those are kind of the big ones for me right now. And if you want a really great meal planning cookbook, my friend Cassie Joy Garcia has one called, she has two books in this whole series, the whole Cook Once, Eat All Week, and Cook Once Dinner Fix. Like,
Oh
I look
yeah.
at it and I'm like, this is genius. Like, it really does help busy people get food on the table and have it be transformed into something, delicious the next night.
Yeah, when I use that, I actually have that on my coffee table and use it almost every
Mm.
week. It's a great book. She has been on the show before. She was
Ah,
so nice and so fun to interview. I really like talking to her.
yeah, she's really great. Like her middle name is exactly like she is a joy.
Yeah, yeah, she makes you feel just when you're talking, even on just Zoom, makes your day better. It's really nice.
Mhm.
Now, what is next for you? Or what is next for Nom Nom Paleo?
We've never had any type of plan ever. Like people are like, what's your 5-year plan? Or what's, whatever. I'm like, I don't know. We've like this is kind of like the passion project that became my career kind of by luck and by, chance. And I don't know. I think we'll just keep doing what we're doing and put out a book every 5 years because it takes us that long to make.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like the kids are getting older. I'm getting older. Like I don't know. I will do this for as long as it's fun.
I mean, I'm surprised nobody's approached you for a TV show because with your graphics and your husband's artwork, this would be like the coolest TV show.
Uh, I don't know. I've never wanted that. I mean, like I've never
Yeah,
wanted
you'd have to kind of want
like
that. Yeah.
people are always like, "Hey, you want to have a cookie show?" I'm like, "No, that sounds like kind of a nightmare to me." Like I like being able to be in my home kitchen and just say and just pop on impromptu and say, "Hey, this is what I'm making right now." Because literally, that is me making dinner as I'm making it. Like it's not a pre-planned thing where I'm like, in my editorial calendar on Wednesday, we're going to be making this. Like it literally is like, oh, my kid has a basketball game. I am going to season these pork chops and throw them in my air fryer. And so let me show you because it can be this easy like, for you to make dinner.
Now you're also in the Bay Area, and I like try to give a shout outs because I know that a lot of restaurants are struggling right now. Are there any restaurants you want to give some a shout out to, a promotional to places you like to go to in the Bay Area?
Oh, let me think.
Sorry, kind
I
of a
like
surprise
a bunch.
question.
Yeah, no. I actually like a lot of kind of small hole in the wall Mexican places.
Me too.
And Ethiopian. Those are maybe my favorite. In terms of like Mexican, there's a place in Palo Alto that opened pretty recently called San Agus. And
Mm,
it's not paleo, but they have a lot of gluten-free things. So we go there a lot. But they have really great birria tacos and lengua tacos and
nice.
tlayuda. Like I love all those things. And obviously it's not paleo. Um, there's an Ethiopian place in San Jose I like a lot called Zeni. Um, and there's another one called La U that opened up pretty recently, and they have this really great outdoor patio. And it's really interesting because it's like in a little strip mall, and I think it's next to like a bail bonds place. But the restaurant itself has this really cute outside courtyard that is like tucked away under redwoods in the corner. And so it's like you're transported to a different place, and the people there are amazing, and the Ethiopian food is really tasty. So Liu is a really good one.
Nice. Very nice. I have to check those out. I do.
Yeah, none of these are paleo, but
Yeah.
they're really good.
Well, I want to thank you, Michelle, for being on the show. You've been really fun to talk to, and I hope we get a chance to have you on here again. Maybe we could have your husband on too as well sometime.
Yeah, he's not here right now because he's taking my son to get his driver's test, which hopefully.
Well, good luck for him. He'll do great.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
That was my conversation with Michelle Tam from Nom Nom Paleo, and her newest cookbook is out this week. It's available on Amazon, and it's also available on any other major book distributor list. So also, I wanted to mention that coming up on Friday, we have an exciting guest. I got to talk to author Adrian Miller from Black Smoke, Soul Food, and The President's Kitchen Cabinet, among other books. He's a great food writer, and I really enjoy getting a chance to talk to Adrian. He's a professional barbecue judge, a huge food historian, and just all-around great food writer in a historical vein, and very knowledgeable about barbecue. Just a great guest. So please tune in on Friday for my talk with author Adrian Miller. And then until then, I hope you have a great week, and I hope you've had a great 3-day weekend. I look forward to having you hear my conversation on Friday and some of the rest of the great guests we have coming up here in Season 5. Until then, happy cooking.